Our taxpayer money is literally paying the salaries of the Ukrainian government officials right now. I will further make a hard commitment that NATO will not and will never admit Ukraine to NATO. Xi Jinping will have to think twice before going after Taiwan, because Xi Jinping's bet right now.
I mean, what is even going on here? Is this just
They refuse to tell us. The fact that we're voting against even an audit of how much money we've given them tells you how designed this corrupt process is to be corrupt. A lot of American taxpayers don't know this. They should. Our taxpayer money is literally paying the salaries of the Ukrainian government officials right now. So it's not only paying for our own deep state in this country, it's paying for the deep state in Ukraine. This is madness. And so what I've said is I would end the war. I will end the war by doing a deal on terms that will advance our interests. A deal requires everybody to get something out of the trade. That includes Putin. So here's the deal I would do. Freeze the current lines of control. A Korean War-style armistice agreement. I will further make a hard commitment that NATO will not and will never admit Ukraine to NATO. But in return, we get something greater. What is that? China and Russia have to end their military alliance. Russia has to pull out of its military partnership with China. That is the single greatest threat we face in this country from a military perspective. Russia has the largest nuclear stockpile in the world, has hypersonic missile capabilities ahead of that of the US and China. China has naval capacity, especially in the South China Sea, ahead of the US, and an economy that we depend on for the shoes on our feet or the phones in our pockets, our modern way of life. That is the single greatest threat we face. So in return for that deal, Putin has to exit his military alliance with China. I'll make him remove the nuclear weapons from Kaliningrad, the little strip bordering Poland, and remove any Russian military presence from the Western Hemisphere. Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela. Yes, there are Russian troops on the ground. Get them out of the Western Hemisphere. In return, we'll also open up economic relations with Russia. I do believe we're the ones that foolishly bombed the Nord Stream 1 and 2. We will rebuild that. I think we want economic integration of Russia back into Western Europe and even with the West. Then Putin has no reason to be in bed with China. That's how we drive generational change and peace, not just in Ukraine, not just to save the money. But now Russia's not in China's camp. Xi Jinping will have to think twice before going after Taiwan, because Xi Jinping's bet right now is that the US won't want to mess with two different allied nuclear superpowers at the same time. That's what gives him the confidence to go after Taiwan. But if Russia's no longer in his camp, and then we'll talk about, if you want, about how we get India on side as well, but mostly Russia, if we get Russia no longer in his camp, Xi Jinping definitely has to think twice before going after that island nation that's actually increasingly armed. That is how we at once end the war in Ukraine, but also deter China from going after Taiwan without going to war over it. That's the kind of leadership we need, as opposed to a neocon establishment now in both parties. And basically every other candidate in this race on the Republican side other than Trump is a neocon. And basically every Democrat who's running other than Bernie Sanders, or who's run in recent history other than Bernie Sanders, is also a neocon. It's a neocon consensus that is marching us closer to World War III, which I think is a great risk we face. The risk of World War III and nuclear war involving Russia, it's going up every day and nobody's talking about it. Mm-hmm. I am deeply worried about this. But I think as US president, I will be in a position to end the madness, to be transparent, to speak the truth, to stop pretending that Ukraine is some bastion of democracy. It's not. And to actually stand, and even if it were, it's not our job to protect it. It's their job to protect themselves. That's the answer.
I love what you're saying. I really do. I don't see, I mean, you did a live with Elon Musk on Twitter the other day, and yes. I found that fascinating. Elon said, I can't remember if it was during that live or at some other point, but he was talking about how the U.S. has weaponized its currency. Now we see BRICS coming about. It's gaining a lot of momentum. You know, they want to start their own currency backed by gold, apparently. So with that gaining so much momentum, you know, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Argentina is getting involved, Iran, Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of countries that are moving towards this because we put sanctions on countries. We've weaponized our dollar, and it's hurt a lot of countries. You know, whether they deserve it or not, I see their point, and they're making headway.
Part, and you know this well, Shawn, those sanctions don't even work anymore then, right? Sanctions only work if the nation doesn't have an alternative. Now we're just driving everybody into China's hands.
Yes. So with all the momentum that they're making with BRICS and the new currency, why would they stop? I don't understand what would be the incentive to make it
So it's
stop.
still relatively early is the good news. And this is why domestic policy and foreign policy go together. I've said that actually the sole job of the U.S. Federal Reserve should be to stabilize the U.S. dollar. I would peg the U.S. dollar to a basket of commodities: gold, silver, nickel, and agricultural and farm commodities. That will ground stability in the U.S. dollar again, which then, for many nations, will make the appeal of the dollar higher relative to switching over to BRICS. I think that also reopening economic relations with Russia will be a giant leap forward, and Russia still would love economic relations with the West if they could actually trust us.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.